Hey guys, so returning to a series I started many years ago regarding the different lightsaber fighting forms. Now I have a few videos on them in a compilation. However, now I'd like to go and individually make videos on each form. So I've made the first form many years ago, as well as the second form, and now we will continue on the third form. So, what is the third form? Who uses it? And what are its weaknesses and strengths? Well, after seeing his master, Qui-Gon Jinn, cut down in battle against Darth Maul on the mid-rim planet of Naboo, Obi-Wan Kenobi's faith in the Force was shaken. But more than that, he wondered if his own ability to resist a Sith in battle would be enough. His master had taught him Form 4, the way of the Hawkbat, but it wasn't enough to defeat Maul, who, like his master Darth Sidious, was a master of Juyo. Swearing to never let another dark side practitioner get the better of him again, Obi-Wan changed his lightsaber form when he became Anakin's teacher. The wise Jedi chose Soresu, Form 3, the most defense-based lightsaber dueling method out of all. He became so great in the technique that even Mace Windu, widely regarded as the greatest duelist of the Clone Wars era, referred to Kenobi as the master of Soresu. So what exactly is Form 3, and how did it compare to the other lightsaber forms that preceded it? Like most other lightsaber dueling arts, Form 3 was created in response to both Form 2, Makashi, and Form 1, Shicho. Shicho, Form 1, was the earliest lightsaber technique, and as such, was one of the least refined, borrowing heavily from a long-forgotten era when Jedi wielded the durasteel blades of the weapon's temple on Tython. Form 1 was basically the same as any other traditional sword-based martial art. When Makashi or Form 2 came about, it tried to create an entire textbook of new maneuvers and tactics that lightsaber wielders could use that were specifically created to take advantage of the kyber crystal-powered weapon. For example, unlike the simple disarming technique of Shicho, which was based on metal sword methods, Form 2 taught its duelists to specifically slice through the hilt of a lightsaber in order to completely deactivate it. But even Makashi had its problems. Form 2 was developed in response to the rise of Dark Jedi and the need to perfect dueling skills for one-on-one fights against other lightsaber wielders. That meant its practitioners were pretty vulnerable to fights against groups of enemies, and also battles that involved modern weapons like blasters and artillery, which they never learned to adequately deflect. Form 3, known also as the Way of the Mynock, or Soresu, tried to address the major weaknesses of Makashi and more. Overall, this form, the one that Kenobi would perfect, was deliberately designed as a defensive art. That meant in a Form 3 expert's ideal scenario, both he and his opponent would leave the battle alive. This also meant that Soresu was probably the most philosophically compatible lightsaber technique for the Jedi, since it preserved even the life of its enemies. But its lack of killing strikes and focus on offense meant that those who trained in the art carried the entire burden of the battle. It was entirely on them to survive. All their opponent had to do was get one lucky strike, and the duel would be over. But someone like Kenobi had to deflect and parry hundreds of strikes in a fight in order to find an opening of a counter, or convince their enemy that the battle wasn't worth either of their lives. That perhaps was the greatest weakness of Form 3, and when you combine that vulnerability with the other innate weaknesses in Soresu practitioners, then you can see just how easily a master of Form 2 like Count Dooku could beat them. If we take another look at Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi, we can see how difficult Form 3 was to utilize in old age. When dueling Darth Vader aboard the first Death Star, Kenobi struggled to deflect the powerful cyborg-powered strikes that the Sith Lord laid out. His defeat in the battle wasn't entirely due to his fighting style, Soresu, but it certainly didn't help. Absorbing blows and parrying strikes worked well enough when Kenobi was in the prime of his life. During the Clone Wars, the Jedi Master was at peak physical fitness, and he practiced his dueling almost daily. The combination of the two meant that his conditioning would rarely come into questioning during a duel, and he could last for hours if need be. But after spending 20 years in the desert of Tatooine, Kenobi, just like any other humanoid, felt the weariness of age. Although you might guess that an acrobatic style of dueling like the one Yoda employed would have been the worst for a tired old Jedi Master, Soresu was also difficult for aging practitioners to employ, especially when they were facing off against opponents who were much more physically powerful, like Vader, for example. In one of the canon explanations of Kenobi's loss to Vader in their rematch, Obi-Wan's age, as well as his general inability to parry the Sith's heavy attacks, were cited as the main reasons. But But Kenobi wasn't the only famous Form 3 master. Thousands of years before the Clone Wars and just a few years after Exar Kun had failed to destroy the Galactic Republic, a Jedi Master named Mitra Surik used the technique. During her time, the Sith Emperor plagued the galaxy with schemes and plots from the safety of the Outer Rim. Thanks to her leadership in life, and even during her death, when she advised Jedi as a ghost, Mitra helped eradicate the Sith Empire, and in the millennia that followed, Form 3 continued to be popular amongst both Jedi and Sith. Around 1,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, or in other words, before Episode 4, when the Brotherhood of Darkness desperately tried to defeat the Jedi, Darth Bane realized the importance of the dueling form. He taught it to one of his apprentices, a skilled Force adept named Darth Zana. She used the defensive style to stalemate her master in their first duel to the death, and in the rematch successfully held him off long enough to use her own Sith magic to kill him. Darth Vader even chose to study Soresu in the years following his mutilation on the surface of Mustafar. In addition to his superior strength, his unique hodgepodge of fighting styles, which leaned heavily on Soresu, are what helped him down Obi-Wan Kenobi once and for all. Now, when Vader turned into the masked machine that we know him to be, he had to relearn all of the lightsaber fighting styles all over again. So while Anakin was super proficient and masterful at Form 5 Dem So, Vader had to relearn everything from scratch because his new body was, well, new. His hands were bigger, his cybernetic limbs were longer, and he was just overall a droid now. He had to relearn how to use everything. And in the Brotherhood novel, it explains that Anakin, with his mechanical hand after his battle with Dooku, actually lagged behind his organic hand. So if he would think to move his hand or his fingers, there would be a lag time in between him thinking it and actually moving. So you can imagine how this actually would affect Vader later on. So ultimately, it's hard to look at Form 3 without imagining the days after Qui-Gon Jinn's death, and the doubt it filled Obi-Wan with. Although the fighting style had been in existence for millennia, it found its greatest user in Master Kenobi, and it was the tragedy of his own master's death, which he blamed on Form 4, that brought him there. I think if Qui-Gon Jinn had survived, he would have taught Anakin perhaps maybe some other lightsaber forms. But at the end of the day, it was Anakin who enjoyed Form 5 Dem So the most, which was more of a offensive form than Obi-Wan's Form 3, which was purely defensive. I wonder if Anakin was trained by Master Windu, would he have learned Form 7? Which we will have a video on all to itself in a little bit. But first, let's continue on with Form 4 in the next video. Thanks for watching this one. If you enjoyed it, leave a like, and I'll see you all in the next video. Until then, remember, the Force will be with you, always.